What is up, y'all? Welcome back to Chosen Price Chats. Today I am joined with Sean, better known as Lucky Egg Soda on Instagram. How are you doing tonight, Sean?
I'm doing good, Colin. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, of course. You are a very prevalent collector of not only Pokemon but the Naruto CCG, which I seriously know nothing about despite loving Naruto. So I'm very excited to learn a bit from you.
Yeah, I started out with Pokemon, and Naruto's pretty new to me actually over the last few years. But I'm happy to share kind of what that's looked like for me, and what I've learned from a lot of other people. So
Awesome. So I guess just initially, where did collecting start for you? Maybe even before you got into it as an adult, but yeah,
yeah,
where things begin?
I think like most people, it is like Pokemon was the thing when I was a kid in elementary school.
Yeah.
Uh, I remember getting into that and not knowing anything about protecting your cards or anything like that, and just bringing them to school and everybody gawking over everybody else's collection and making bad trades, things like that.
Yeah.
So, but I also played the original Game Boy games pretty consistently back then. So for me, it was that was like the main connection. And then as you went through elementary, junior high, high school, I think that died down like most people. And I actually remember donating my binder of Pokemon to Goodwill. And
Oh
then,
man.
I don't think like some people, I think they say like, oh, my parents tossed it. And I'm like, nope,
Yeah.
I definitely recall that mistake.
Brought it
So
yourself.
yeah, brought it upon myself. So I missed out on pretty much after e-reader era. Because I definitely remember having the e-reader cards and scanning them on like Game Boy. But
Mhm.
then I think I picked it up very briefly at one point in high school, when they had the Prime cards for the Heart Gold Soul Silver era. But that didn't last long. I think that was maybe like a 6 to 12 month uh, dipping my feet back in.
Hmm.
I just kind of lost it again after that. So and then yeah, like again, like most, I COVID hit and remember seeing the pack breaks on social media, and I thought it was the dumbest thing at the time. I was like, why would I want
Yeah.
someone to open packs on my behalf?
Right.
Uh, and then I kind of just dismissed it for a while. I mean, it kept popping up. I didn't think anything of it. And then a friend of my wife's actually had brought it up, and I checked it out again. And somehow at least the YouTube content, for like Pokerev and others, like it was kind of enticing. Maybe I found myself keep watching the next whatever airing they had, and before I knew it, maybe a month after that, I was picking out cards on my own, and at some point I actually started, buying into like Poker Rose Lives. Eventually, stumbled into Whatnot, got out of Whatnot, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it kind of just spiraled from there. And it's different, right? Like it's a different appreciation now toward artwork and the nostalgia factor and
Mhm.
whatever else ties you to the genre at this point compared to when I was a kid. And it's like, it's just a really cool piece of cardboard at that point in time that
Right.
I wasn't afraid to damage or feel like I really had to be connected to. So yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So I guess like I said before, Pokemon. I've seen a lot of Pokemon cards on your page, especially earlier when you
Yeah.
started posting. It was basically mainly Pokemon, but you kind of made a shift towards Naruto. I guess where did Naruto start playing a role in your life?
So I didn't really discover Naruto till um like just around the time I got out of college, actually. Up until that point, the only real exposure to anime I had was kind of like the Studio Ghibli films, or like, Totoro and Howl's Moving Castle. Big fan of Miyazaki and all that. But I
Mm,
hadn't really gotten into like anime series at that point. And so I had some buddies who that was their thing, and they recommended Naruto as what I should check out. I remember just binging that.
Yeah,
I was single at the time, so just in my apartment, just plowing through episode after episode.
yeah,
Um, and man, it it just hit a chord with me. I feel like that, I don't know. I always resonate with the kind of like the hero type, the person who's trying to to be that role, and Naruto's like story is just he's not liked, but he doesn't quit. And I'm like, man, that's who doesn't connect with that mentality of what they want for themselves. But I just, everything about it, the way they wrote the story, the artwork, um, yeah, I was hooked at that point. Um, Branched out into some other animes like Food Wars, the Shokugeki no Soma
yeah,
show, a few others. But Naruto's always been like that's the one I was fixated on after that.
for sure. Yeah, that's awesome. So, I guess before we get too far into what, do you have like a favorite arc or episode that you can pick out of your head right now?
Uh, well, for the original series, it's it's pretty hard to beat the Rock Lee fighting Gaara for the
Ooh,
first time,
yeah,
especially
yeah, that's
when he drops the
insane.
weights and just
Insane.
uh yeah, I think that was probably like the moment of that original set of Naruto that I was like that was such a good set of episodes. In the later series, I mean, I really like the uh battle with Sakura and Granny Chiyo against Sasori. That whole
Yeah.
bit, uh, battle was just, I don't usually like when they draw out fights too long, but I felt like every episode just had something great to offer in that setting. So, um, which is weird because Sakura is not my favorite character at all, but it's just like that arc was so memorable. Uh, yeah, I'd probably go with that at least off the cuff. So,
Heck yeah. No, I agree with you. That was a really good fight. That is a really great series of episodes. So I can't blame you there for a second. Heck yeah. So I'm looking at your collection on Instagram a little bit earlier, and you've got a lot of a pretty good mix of Japanese, English Pokemon cards, but a lot of like Japanese promos, like the Pikachu promos. What kind of draws you to those kind of cards, or I suppose the Pokemon cards you collect more of?
yeah, I definitely collect more of the Japanese Pokemon, especially promos in general. I think like it helps my mindset of feeling like it's a bit more confined. I don't have to collect everything at that point. And specifically, I go after the Pokemon Center promos, though, but mostly the ones that represent when they opened the Pokemon Center. Uh,
Gotcha.
I just, I like cards that are either connected to some piece of TCG history a lot of the time. And so whether that's um, for actual gameplay, if it's prize card, which I don't tend to go after myself, but Pokemon Center openings like as part of history, as part of establishing themselves in different parts of Japan, and now Taiwan was their most recent one. And so the artworks are usually awesome on all of those, first of all. So there's nothing to get down about. And also, it definitely helps me keep my collection from going out of control.
Yeah,
Um, but I do rip packs for Pokemon, and that mostly focuses on English. I mean, it's a cheap, easy option for scratching that itch. Um, the only real English collection goals I'm doing is I'm just building a binder, going through all the trainer gallery for Sword and Shield right now. So I'll probably do the same for Scarlet and Violet era at some point. I have been ripping it, but I haven't been sorting it out or anything like that. So.
hmm I guess. What do you think of like Scarlet and Violet era compared to Sword and Shield? Are you enjoying it as much?
Um, well, I haven't been playing the games. Actually, I haven't been playing a lot of the games, even Sword and Shield, but at least I had a lot more recognition of the cards in Sword and Shield. I think the artworks are beautiful. Those special illustration rares, most of
Hmm.
them are great. I don't care for the Terra concept. I didn't really care for the Gigantamax concept in Sword and Shield either, to be honest.
Hmm.
Uh, but I especially dislike the designs that the Terras introduce. I just
Yes,
it just feels cheesy. Um, more than, and it doesn't really matter if it's a special illustration version or not. I just every time I see it, it doesn't strike a chord. So, but I think that the eras are fine. Everyone's going through a period of like, oh, Sword and Shield, that's where it's at. That'll eventually change. Everybody will be picking up Scarlet and Violet as the new sets come out. I'm sure they'll improve even further. I actually really like the new uh Matcha Poltergeist character that they had kind
oh
of put out
yeah.
like an ad. They put out like a really cool like story ad for it at one point.
Hmm.
And I think that character is really cool. I mean, I like anything associated with food at that point and like Japanese culture or whatever. But I think there are a few like good ones. I think the artwork is just as good as what they were putting out previously. I just don't resonate with some of the concepts that they've tied to the cards themselves. So.
For sure. Yeah. And so collecting the trainer gallery cards, are you kind of buying the singles or are you trying to rip packs to get those?
For Sword and Shield, I'm at the phase where I'll probably buy singles or trade for singles, especially
Hmm.
a lot of the cheaper ones that I just didn't manage to pull or didn't open too much of that set. For Scarlet and Violet, though, I'm still at the point where I'm products pretty cheap. Some of the cards are pretty expensive, so I kind of like look at the set and how much I need, and if I think that I can probably average out by ripping, then I'll still do that for a while.
For sure.
Um, but I'm also in no rush, so card prices are all over the place with those sets falling and whatnot. So uh, that'll be something I just do over time. I don't feel like I need to hit my collection goals, tomorrow, kind of a thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's always good. There's no rush. They're not going anywhere, especially
Yeah.
like the Scarlet Violet era, even the Sword and Shield era. They're not
Pretty
going
pretty
anywhere.
plentiful. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So, kind of moving on to the Naruto CCG, can you just give me a brief rundown, kind of like, because I seriously am in the dark, like about maybe the history, maybe the like the timeline of is it still being made? When did it start? Kind of things along that line.
Yeah. So it started in '06, I believe, with the first set. So their base set is called Path to Hokage, and it's got pretty much the most iconic artwork you can think of from some of the earliest episodes of the anime. Um, and then it went through, I think, 28 sets. It ended with Ultimate Ninja Storm 3, and that one I think ended in 2013. So it's a dead TCG at this point, um, which makes it really interesting to collect and come into at the point where it's already dead. Because
Yeah.
at the point that it ended is probably a year before I discovered Naruto, I think. So it might have still been on the shelves, being liquidated or something, but I wasn't even at that point of interest to jump into that.
Yeah.
Uh, so I don't know too much about the gameplay itself, so I'm not gonna be able to go provide much insight into how that works. But uh, I've met plenty of people in the community at this point that they were either players back then or collectors back then that are took similar breaks the way we took breaks in Pokemon, and came back or maybe even still had some of their old decks or collections. And so I've learned a lot of what I have about the Naruto CCG through them because the online resources are pretty poor most of the time. It's not as well
Hmm.
documented as Pokemon, where you can go find just about anything you want to know in both the Japanese and English. In Naruto, there are some resources out there. Some are not as easy to discover as others.
Hmm.
But a lot of what is by just talking to people that were in it, that knew it at the time that it was still going.
Oh, that's awesome. So do a lot of the people I guess you've met, they seem pretty willing to share that information? Like if you ask, they're just like, "Oh yeah, I know," or "I know a thing or two" kind of thing?
Yeah, I've found it to be a pretty like willing, open community, at least for those that are left uh in it that know those kinds of things. I mean, I think it's the same with Pokemon in that regard. Like everybody loves to talk to people that want to learn, right? It, you want to be around people that are just generally passionate and interested in what, you have to share from your time spent in that. So I've found that the people that I go to when I have questions about certain card variations or, just, you know, what was released when or whatnot, usually they're very forthcoming with information, usually more than I was even seeking, and I'll go and discover something new that I need to add to my list of things to go after.
Mhm.
That's happened on more than one occasion, and yeah, it's been really great.
Nice. Yeah, that's always awesome. So, I guess kind of going to those variations, can you give me like a little breakdown of maybe like the rarity or how rarity works in the
Oh yeah.
CCG?
So kind of it's more basic than I guess Pokemon these days, but maybe it's more reflective of like old Pokemon where it's like you had your commons, you got your uncommons, and then every pack has one rare, which is a non-foil card that's got like some rainbow lettering for the text, the card title,
Hmm.
and then uh, and then you're guaranteed one foil in a pack, and that
Oh
foil can
wow.
be it can be anything. It can be of any rarity, and then and then it could also be the final one, which is the super rares, which are these like gold foil cards, and those ones only come as that final rarity. So everything else though has a foil variant that you could pull in those packs. And the first four sets, uh, the odds of pulling a super rare was like 1 in 12 packs. And that changed when they hit set five, they changed it to 1 in 6 packs. And so unlike Pokemon, where we open booster boxes in English and you don't know what you're gonna get, right? Like there's no
Right.
guaranteed secret rares or alt arts or whatever it is. We had averages for like original base set and wizard stuff, but
Yeah.
in Naruto, it's guaranteed. The odds are there. You open a box. If it's a 1 in 12 set, you're gonna get two super rares out of that box. If it's a 1 in 6 set, you're gonna get four super rares out of that box because those boxes are 24 packs.
Mm.
Um, so they're very consistent in that regard, which is good and bad. It creates certain cases where you go and open a box, you can probably come up with if you're trying to chase a certain card, you know what your odds are for probably pulling that card.
Hmm.
Um, but if you're buying product on the eBay or other third parties, it also means it's
Mm.
those packs could have been searched by now. Um, they're not weighable from what I've encountered. The way they did the foiling didn't change between like the higher rarities and the foiling of the other cards.
Hmm.
But there were tells on the way they printed packs that led to if it was a super pack, maybe they were printed at a different facility or something like that. And therefore the wrappers have different markers or something that would look slightly different than the other packs when you line them up. Sometimes it's really
Wow.
hard to see,
Yeah.
but it's possible. And I've done that myself to keep my odds where they are and just only rip the ones I need to rip. Um, but it also means that like yeah, if you're selling to people, you need to like disclose that information. You don't know these people on eBay, things like that. So, um, yeah, it definitely creates a different scenario at that point.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And yeah, that the like foiling possibility on every card kind of reminds me of like, Pokemon Tops or something like that, where it seems like it'd make it hard to get, the foil you want, honestly. If I don't know how big the sets are, but it
Yeah,
almost makes
yeah.
it
So sometimes
yeah.
it's easier to pull a super rare than it is to get a common in the foil version. So, and in some sets they had multiple foilings that they would put out.
Mm,
They in the early sets they had like a diamond foil pattern and a
oh,
wavy foil pattern, and everybody the diamond foils were beautiful. Everybody typically chased after those,
mhm,
and they would even like seed them by like pack art. So some of the sets there's two pack arts that would come in a box, and
mhm,
certain one held the diamond foils and another one had the wavies. And Bandai liked to experiment. They changed the foil types over time, and some things became predictable, some became less predictable. Um, they went through phases with other things like tagging first edition versus unlimited. Um, they eventually got rid of unlimited at one point and just had first edition stamps on everything. And then they switched to just unlimited. They got rid of first edition altogether, and it ended that way.
interesting.
And so those are parts of like the history that I've had to learn from other people. Like that's not written down anywhere. Um, and so you don't know if like some collectors are like, oh, well, I only want first edition, and then you have to educate them. Well, there is no first edition, not on this later set or whatever.
Mhm,
Um, and I know in like Japanese Pokemon, right? Like unlimited and especially the middle era, like that's more rare usually. I I personally couldn't tell you if certain sets are actually more rare if they're unlimited in Naruto versus First Ed. I'd have to go and refer to somebody that has been around long enough to know what that print population looked like. So,
for sure. Huh, interesting. So, is there like, I guess speaking of variations, I always see there's like some packs you open that have like the chibi versions of characters. What is up with those packs?
so there's a there are four sets called Tournament Pack, TP1 through TP4. And those are the chibi sets. The last one of those doesn't have, I mean, it has some chibi, but it actually like changed the art style altogether. It was
Oh, okay.
pretty unique. They had brought in another artist to make their own rendition of, Kishimoto's characters and stuff. But there are still chibis in those. I don't actually know what the release looked like for those sets. I like the chibi format. It actually gets a ton of hate
Oh,
in the community. A lot of people tend to say, "Oh man, the chibis are the worst." I don't know. I think they're cute. They just remind me of, and I think they're actually the most anime thing I can think of. I referring to other anime is like there's always like chibi moments drawn into those episodes of whether it's Naruto or Ghibli or something else. Like they always come up with that kind of like art style at some point. And
mhm,
so I think it's just kind of like iconic to that. You don't really see that in a lot of other things. So I like them, but yeah, they don't get a lot of love. That's actually what I don't collect sealed mostly, but I do collect the booster boxes for the tournament
ooh,
pack sets. So I have all four of them. It's the only thing that I have managed not to rip.
yeah,
And so again, it was like kind of going back to like Pokemon where I collect Pokemon Center promos. It keeps me kind of like confined a bit in making sure my collection doesn't spread. I ended up like focusing on, well, if I'm gonna have sealed, I'm just gonna go after something that has like its own subset essentially. Um, so I did that, and then I'm working on different collection goal. But yeah, the chibis are fun. Well, from my perspective.
yeah.
Um, but I don't know if Tournament Pack was released as they are like different, like they're not part of the set enumeration. But I don't know if they're released for specific tournaments or what. I know like Yu-Gi-Oh has tournament pack as part of some of their sets, but I don't know if it follows a similar pattern that Konami did or what.
Mhm.
It is an area I would love to get to know more, but I have asked a few people and I don't think I got ever got a concrete understanding of that. So
Oh, yeah. That's super interesting to me that it's just so basically undocumented, or not well documented, I suppose, as compared to TCGs like Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, stuff like that. That's interesting. But so you've got a lot of Japanese Pokemon cards, and I thought it's interesting you open a lot of English Naruto. Was this CCG a thing in Japan?
It is. Yeah, they had a Japanese version of it. They've even had some other sets that weren't like the main CCG. So they did Miracle Battle Cardass, which is also made by Bandai. You know, Pokemon has Cardass cards as well.
Hmm.
Uh, but I didn't start I didn't know about the Japanese Naruto when I started. I only had seen the English, and I didn't know enough about the Japanese Naruto scene in terms of where you would find information even about these sets, what they're called, what's in them. Like I thought finding information on English Naruto was hard enough. So I tended to lean towards that. I have open packs for Japanese Naruto, but I don't go seeking them. And typically I find the pull rates or what's guaranteed more confusing. I have yet to figure out, if you were to buy a box, what you should expect out of it. So
Gotcha.
kind of just stayed with what I knew, and also I just found the community to be bigger on the English side. I only know maybe less than a handful of people that actually know anything about the Japanese era concretely. And so it was just easier to engage in the English one. Um, I didn't feel like I needed to go after Japanese in that in this hobby. So
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense for sure. So, I know you have a few graded Naruto cards. Do you typically grade with a certain service, or is there like
yeah,
a more generally accepted one, I suppose?
when I got into it, there was only two main places to grade Naruto at the time. There was one in Canada called MNT, and then there was Beckett here in the US. There were a few that were like new grading companies that kind of spun out, and they were willing to take they were willing to take anything.
Right.
So it was definitely not going to be like oh, I had no confidence in whether they were actually authenticating a card. I just figured they slap a grade on it, kind of thing. Whereas
Yeah.
MNT seemed pretty on par with, actually at the time it was, I think, more favored than Beckett was. Um, and I have seen that change. I think there's a lot more favor towards Beckett now. But even in just the last year, PSA, they started grading cards back in 2023 for Naruto. And they weren't doing that previously. It was somebody in the community actually had worked with them apparently to help get kind of the set and card lists added to their registry. I'm
Hmm.
not really sure what PSA's process is for when they choose to adopt creating something new. With Beckett, it seems like pretty easy. If they don't have it on their pop report or in the registry, you can basically provide them information and they'll go through and they'll authenticate and grade it. I've seen them reject cards. I've seen them reject things for wrong reasons, like some companies have done, and so they're
Yeah,
not perfect. Um, and I've kind of stuck with Beckett, at least for my specific collection goal. I like consistency. So when I look at my slabs, I kind of want them to all be in the same encasement.
for sure.
I have graded with PSA for Naruto, and it went horribly. Um,
Oh.
it was a very frustrating experience, and I only do PSA for Pokemon.
Hmm.
So, I was seeing more interest of PSA in the hobby for Naruto, and I traditionally like the PSA cases in terms of the low profile and whatnot. But yeah, it was a pretty bad experience, both in terms of the communication they had, and like they couldn't identify the card, and they were going to return it, and just refund that set of cards. And then at the last minute, they claimed they identified it, and they labeled it the wrong set, gave it gave them all sixes, and I
Oh
was like,
boy.
well, I don't believe any of this now because you did label it wrong. I just think it was a money grab at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I was pretty put off by that. I still think about trying again. I also had done that with it was a combined sub for Pokemon and Naruto, so I wonder how much bias went into kind of the mixed genre submission as well. Um, but I know plenty of people that have had great success grading with PSA for their Narutos now. Um, I think you just never know when you send off to grading who's looking at your card, what's gonna it's its own form of gambling, really. So
Yeah. But yeah, that's unfortunate. But hopefully, if you do choose to send again and just send like a regular or a full Naruto submission, it'll get a little different treatment. Hopefully, that sounds like
yeah.
an iffy scenario. Yeah,
I definitely have been pondering that as like the next experiment is just doing a pure Naruto sub and see if the outcome is different. So
for sure. Yeah, so these Naruto foil cards, they're like full foil surfaces. I feel like we chatted a little bit. They got to be hard to grade. What do you think is like the best or your favorite maybe card that you've graded?
um well my biggest accomplishment is a very recent one. I graded this so let's see if I can get it without the glare. So this is
Oh yeah.
a Minato from the Curse of the Sand set. And so for my collection, it's kind of unique and maybe not the most desired way to go about it. But I told myself I wanted to pull or have someone pull for me, like on a live stream, for instance, uh,
Mhm.
every Minato super rare that they ever produced. Um, and so I created a checklist, and I've been working through that for like 2 years now. Doesn't feel
Mhm.
like it's been that long. But this one took the longest because this is from one of those first four sets that I was telling you about, where the odds are harder, and there's
Yeah.
plenty of super rares in that set. And I bought a few full boxes. I ripped through them, and I was not lucky enough for a very long while. You definitely get to the point of questioning the investment side of what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I pulled this one earlier this year, finally, from a loose pack lot that I bought on eBay, which is for these sets is never it's like the riskiest gamble because you know what the odds are, you know it's so bad. So loose packs is even worse. Most people stay away from them. And not only did I pull the card, it was a first edition variant, which I was having terrible luck getting first edition packs for some reason on this set.
Hmm.
And and then it graded a 10. So it's the only one graded, and it's the first 10 of any Minato Super Rare through any set of BGS on their pop report.
Oh my gosh.
So I was very excited.
Huge.
I've also never graded any 10 for Naruto previously of any other character. Um, and so this felt very fulfilling. Like I had gone through this journey to pull this card, and it came out the best grade of any of them. And the grades are always secondary. Like I have a card over there that's a 4.5 that I pulled. That's its own story. But
Sure.
you know, I pulled them because like that's the fun for me in this hobby. It's very different than my experience with Pokemon at this point. I'm not trying to pull any of that stuff. A lot of them
Mhm.
aren't pullable, right? They're promos. But for this, like that's kind of what I went with. I was like, well, the hobby's dead or the TCG's dead, right? And so I'm gonna go enjoy ripping these packs. And then it's kind of like snowballed and yeah, so that's probably my most proud card. But I did grade a few others. So these are the uh Ultimate Ninja Storm 3 Naruto's
Oh
that are
wow.
super rares from that. So, he's in the full KCM mode. And so this one is English. This is the only card in my collection that I didn't pull. Um, I bought this, or I traded for this, and it was in an
Mhm.
M&T slab at the time, and I cracked it out. I traded a bunch of Pokemon at some point, and I'm sure that the values have flipped in a way that I shouldn't have done if I did it today. Um, and so I crossed it over to Beckett, and it came out great. Three of the subgrades had gone up, because MNT also does subs.
Mhm.
And so, and then the other one is a French copy that I actually pulled on a break that somebody did on Whatnot. So it's not the English, but it was like that is the chase from that set. It's the last set that they made. It's the main chase card. So even though I'm not going after like other languages of Naruto, I had to hold on to that one. It was just too good. So
Yeah, that's incredible. I was gonna say, is it gonna be every language of Minato, or are you just kind of putting the brakes on it, English?
no, definitely not. I'm not even doing like first ed versus unlimited. It's whatever I pull is
Sure.
fine by me.
There you
Um,
go.
it would be way too. So that's actually part of the problem with Naruto is they didn't label their packs as first ed or not.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I don't know what Bandai was doing back then, but Bandai makes so many interesting decisions throughout their TCG lifespans.
Yeah.
Uh, so you open a box, there's no labeling on the box for edition. You open a pack, there's no labeling. It's not until you pull that first card that you determine whether or not it's a first ed or not.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and the most notorious set for that, like that people seek after, is the first set, the base set, because I think everybody, almost every box that you find of Path to Hokage comes out being unlimited, and so people always wonder, like, well, where does the first ed packs leaking from that people pulled the cards from? And so we know there's blisters out there that had first ed in them, and that seems to be kind of the primary source that um, the first ed cards seem to come from. We think we've seen one box uh, that did have first ed, but we couldn't find any tells as to why. Um, so it's weird. I don't know why Bandai would have not labeled stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Is there like something comparable in the Naruto CCG to like, your first set Zard, something in that base set that's just kind of ridiculous?
yeah, the the first set that they came out with, the Path to Hokage set, has three of the super rares are Sakura, Sasuke, and Naruto, and those cards in a first edition are what I would say are very much comparable to a Zard, or a first edition Zard. There
Hmm.
are other bigger grails that I think are the most sought after, but if you get that trio in a 10 in first ed, that for the longest time, I think that like the collectors that have been around the most, like those were identified as like those are the gems a lot of the time. Um, but later on in the sets, they released there's a couple different things that kind of profile into that. They're probably maybe less like a Zard and more like a trophy, so to speak. So in set 20, which is their Tales of the Gallant Sage set, they released what they called alt arts, and they produced 20 cards in a different art variant, and they only made 20 prints of each of those cards. So there are only 400 that they ever made.
Oh my gosh.
And we've seen those cards pop up on Heritage over the last year. There's been a few different that went for sale. They went up real high. Some of them crashed real low. More recently, another one went back up again. And, there's a ton of demand. Like these cards they're effectively serialized cards, even though they're not serialized on the card, right?
Right.
So, and one of them happens to be a Minato. So it's not
Oh no.
it's not treated as, yeah, it was on my list as like, well, I'll try.
Yeah.
But we don't even know for any of them if they've all been pulled or not. For all we know, certain ones have been completely pulled. Nobody's accounted for all the copies, to my knowledge, of a given alt art variant.
Hmm.
Um, and so we don't know if they're still lying in somebody's packs, tucked into their closet. Maybe somebody threw them out, right? Like it could be that part of that rarity is actually destroyed at this point. We may never know for any of them. And I know some people that they're not even trying to buy all of them. They're just trying to track down who has what alt arts. Like they're very keen uh on trying to understand like what's out there. There's a really great community member. Her name's Skooma Claus on Instagram, and she's been a wealth of knowledge for this kind of thing. Um, and I've seen her active on the Facebook forum, Naruto groups, periodically saying, "All right, it's that time of year again. Who's got what?" um, and
Yeah,
just trying to keep a pulse on what's been discovered and get a better understanding of how many copies we're aware of are in existence right now. Like we know what the upper limit is, but we don't know what is actually still available. So those cards are I mean, those are like the closest we're going to have to, the Pika trophies or whatever limited print cards Pokemon has. There is one more, which is there was a tournament where they released, I think it was 12 signed copies of a variant card of Naruto, had a
oh my,
different foiling added to it for super rare foiling, and it was signed by Kishimoto himself
oh
on
my
these cards.
gosh.
He wrote it out to the literal player's name and then signed it, and so we've seen some of them pop up. Um, and then there's a photo out there on like the old official Bandai Facebook group that they still left it out there. It's not They didn't take it down. And there's a photo that shows all of them together when they were first getting ready to hand them out. Um,
That's so
so
cool.
very, I think they're very cool. It's one of those things where I would absolutely own it. I don't usually want a signature that I don't get myself, but I think the
Hmm.
fact that that one is part of, again, like TCG history for how it was given out, that'd be very cool. I haven't really, I think there was a public or a private sale of it. I don't know what that looked like. I don't think it ever approached anywhere close to an alt art. I could be wrong, but the alts that are graded, like we're seeing them sell for like, you know, somewhere around 3 to 5K. Seeing now some that sold above 10K, depending on the grade. So they're by far the most expensive cards in the hobby.
So I was looking around eBay and I saw one. Is one of the alt arts Sasuke with a Susanoo wall or something like that? And he's
Right. That one's actually not an alt art, but it is.
okay.
That one is up there with this card, basically. It that I was
Oh,
showing earlier.
gotcha. Yeah.
It is, and I think a lot of people go back and forth on arguing like, is that the most sought after Grail outside of alt arts? From as far as a set card goes,
Hmm.
and it sells, I think, more consistently a lot of the time for the higher prices. But yeah, that Sasuke Susanoo, beautiful card. Everyone's always trying to acquire one for their collection in the highest grades possible, just like anything else that's sought after. I definitely think it's in the top three grails of the hobby as far as set cards go.
Oh wow.
Another one that typically lands in that following would be there's a Sage mode Naruto from when he battles Pain, and that card is from a set called Sage's Legacy that is uh, pretty excruciatingly rare to get your hands on these days, in
Hmm.
terms of like packs, um, and boxes even. There are a few sets where it's just like the amount of the amount of quantity that's out there now is so vastly reduced. And so people trying to get that card in a high grade, people will grade and grade and grade, and I've seen plenty that you can't even get like a 9.5 at Beckett. But there are a few that have achieved it, and those cards they fetch a premium, just like the Sasuke Susanoo does. Um, those cards, I don't know what they're sitting at now. I've seen them approach, you know, well over $1,000 in a 10 grade or a 9.5 strong sub grade at various points in time. So, but we don't usually see cards go past go into the five-figure mark for Naruto the way Pokemon does. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's crazy. Yeah, five figures is I can't believe it for Pokemon sometimes. So
yeah.
yeah, but so man, all right. They didn't even print first edition on the boxes or unlimited. How do people know that there were only 20 of each of these alt arts printed?
That was, I think, actually announced when they were releasing the set. Uh,
Okay.
and so there is information out there about that. I don't, I haven't looked at a pack in a long time, like to actually read it. I wonder if they even put that on the back of the packs themselves or the blisters or whatnot. The boxes contain almost no information. Like you turn it over and it's just like, maybe a serial number or something like that, but they don't really describe anything.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, it's definitely information that was out there. I think through the advertising of that set release. So,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Bandai is pretty good about listing their pull rates and stuff on their packs. Like I do a little bit of Digimon, which is made by Bandai. It tells
oh
you
yeah,
all like, how many commons, uncommons, secret rares, special
yeah.
rares, stuff like that. So, all right. Yeah, that's crazy. So, we talked about this beforehand. Would you mind giving a live demonstration of a pack ripping? Show us what's inside one of these Naruto packs.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I have this Unbound Powers tin. Um, this will contain two different sets in it, along with some promo cards. So just gonna crack this open. So this set comes with two different promos. So one is the kind of this Kakashi here, and then they create a variant. This one, the Tsunade. So this is actually a super rare. They made some very minor tweaks to it from
Hmm.
when it was first printed in a set, and then they just threw it and they called it an alt design or whatever. Um, I don't even know how many different ones can be pulled out of this.
Huh.
Again, it's one of those things where I don't think they defined it. No, it just says one alternate design super rare. So they don't even tell you of like how many you might need to open or collect. Um, and then let's see. So this set has, or this tin has, this emerging alliance set.
Okay.
So I think that's set 13 or 14. I think it's 14. And then this is the Fateful Reunion set. Um, this set is kind of like Sage's Legacy in a sense, where it's actually really hard to get these packs in the form of blisters or boxes. Um, Oddly enough, there's a box right now on eBay that shocked everybody that got listed this week that's up for auction. So it'll be really interesting to see what that one sells for. Because I
Hmm.
don't know that we've seen a box for the Fateful Reunion go up since I got back in.
Oh
Um,
my gosh. Wow.
but yeah, so I'm actually gonna open up one of those Fateful Reunion packs because it is a fun set. This Sasuke is one of the chases in that set. There's also
Okay.
a Sasori that people really like. There's a very cheap in terms of like you could buy the single Shikamaru super rare in this set. That
Yeah.
I think it's the best artwork they gave Shikamaru is in this set. It's
Ooh.
only like $5 for the card, so it wouldn't be one where uh you know go seeking to pull that card unless you're doing
Okay.
with Minato. So
Man, I'm about to get off this call and go onto eBay and buy that card. Shikamaru is my favorite character.
oh really?
Yeah, I
Oh
love
man.
Shikamaru. That's awesome. I'm gonna have to find that
Awesome. So some of these sets, the older sets, I can remember the pack trick of. This one I don't, so I'm just gonna run through it. I'll try to get closer to this. So
for sure.
an evil spirit. Oh,
Oh,
and
wow.
that the foil right off the bat. Wow. So we got a Kashi Hatake. And this is
Oh,
a
yeah.
rare foil. You can tell. So the rarity is these dots down here on the
Interesting.
card.
Okay.
So no dots is your commons, one is your uncommon, two is your rare, and
Hmm.
then three would be the super rare. Um, and so getting a rare foil is great. That's a beautiful card.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
sweet. That is sweet.
and like we talked about earlier, the fact is that you can generally pull a super rare easier than certain rare or certain other cards in a foil. So
Hmm.
uh, yeah, I'll
Heck yeah,
let me go
dude.
through the rest. I'll go through the rest of the pack since we hit that
Yeah.
so early. Take ourselves a Rock Lee. And then there's these jutsu cards and mission cards. So these are like the supporting to your ninjas in the
Hmm.
set. Um, everything's backwards. I think that's a Tayuya.
Hmm.
And then wow, this one was very heavy on
Heavy
the
on the
jutsu.
supporters.
And there's your so this is the rare I was talking about. So
Oh,
even
yeah.
though foil rare, I'm still guaranteed a regular rare. The foil basically can be anything. And you can see how the lettering is this like rainbow effect that they put on it. But yeah, I mean, very nice cards. And you don't these tins, you don't know. There's no guarantee that you're gonna pull a super from any of the four packs. So it's always a gamble. I think most of the time people say that it's probably like one in every three tins if you kind of go through like the odds in itself
Hmm.
that you should hit a super. Um, I've certainly hit worse odds from what I've opened. So
Sure. Yeah, that's
um,
awesome. Yeah, thank you for opening that for us. That's super cool. And obviously tons of videos on your or reels on your Instagram as well for anyone who wants more of a taste of that. I always look forward to
well,
them.
like I I just feel like I haven't recorded by far like everything that I've opened. I wasn't even thinking about it when I first started. And then
Yeah.
after a while, I was just like, I don't I don't know if you would find this content if you were like trying to find it. And so I thought I should just post it here, if nothing but for myself, and maybe others will enjoy seeing this. Because I've gone out on YouTube to try to find like, oh, what was in this set, or are there any, you know, content creators that had posted ripping boxes or blisters or things like that. And you can find some, not for every set though. There are some where it's just like I couldn't find some set pulled, ripped open at all um, in the history of YouTube. So I figure, especially if I open something more rare, I try to r- make an effort to sit down and record it because you don't know if when the next time somebody's going to actually open some of these packs is going to be.
Yeah.
And the supplies supplies just dwindling like it is for vintage Pokemon, although I think the supply is pretty different in terms of what's left. So,
It certainly sounds like it. I mean, the first time a box is being auctioned in 2 years, that's pretty unheard of in Pokemon these days. At least for like English sets.
that's true. And we see an illustrator up once a month at this point. So,
Yeah, honestly. Oh my gosh. That's funny. But yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna start wrapping things up here. I really appreciate your time and stuff, but um, I I gotta ask, what are these? What are I mean, probably different things, but what do each of these franchises mean to you? You know, Pokemon and Naruto.
well, for Pokemon, it's a nostalgia factor, for
Hmm.
sure. I mean, it's what I grew up on, and I think for I have two kids now, and getting them into Pokemon has been pretty easy for my oldest.
Hmm.
He knows what Pikachu is and Charizard and all these things, and I feel like that's the kind of thing that I can introduce him to now that he'll be interested in, and I can like have that kind of bond with. Naruto, one day I'd like to introduce him to it, but it's kind of more of a me thing right now. It's
Yeah.
something where it's like I just really connected with that anime. Um, and it's one of the things where like Pokemon, I mostly just collect cards, but with Naruto, I collect a variety of memorabilia at this point. It's kind of seen behind me, whether that's, pops, which I try not to dabble in too much anymore, or just uh, some of the magazines that they put out for Naruto. It's always fun to like come across those and add those in. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, they just hit different areas for me. I find opening Naruto just a bit more fun. I don't know what it is, but I just I have a lot more fun than when I was opening Evolving Skies or something in Pokemon. I still enjoy it. I would open
Hmm.
product, but I don't go seeking out the rips of Pokemon nearly as much as I do Naruto these days. So
Yeah. Yeah. Just side note, I love your shelf. That is a very awesome display you have going. That's sweet. But yeah, awesome. And I guess, one last thing I always like to ask people for you, I guess I usually ask for Pokemon, but for you, I'll ask, what do you have a tip for anyone looking to get into the Naruto CCG? What is some advice you'd give them?
hmm. I think the most helpful thing at this point is to find someone that can educate you first on the different sets, on what you can expect in terms of finding product out there, and how to do it in a safe, reliable, trustworthy manner. Because you don't know who's selling what. You don't know that with Pokemon, but I think in Naruto, where it's a dead TCG and what's left is pretty unclear, you
Hmm.
don't want to just be going out and buying anything. It's better to have a bit more of a game plan, I think, with Naruto and how you're gonna be engaged. And there are so many great people that are still in it that were there from the beginning. I think if you can latch on to a friendship there, you'll find a lot more success in collecting Naruto. In Pokemon, there's just so much resources out there that you can get by doing it on your own happily for a while.
Hmm.
Maybe eventually somebody helps you understand what it means to frame your collecting goals better, but you know what your cards are. You can go research them a lot easier. And so with Naruto, I think, it definitely helps when you can meet somebody like-minded that's willing to like walk you through some of that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, when the boxes don't have first edition or unlimited on them, it sounds like you need a friend friend to help you out at the beginning for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Sean, thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome, just learning about Naruto and getting to know your collecting a little bit better. Um, so yeah, just thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Colin. Appreciate that. I'm happy to come back any other time you want. So
Oh, I really appreciate that because I do feel like we kind of just hit the tip of the iceberg, and yeah, I'd love to do it again.
cool.
All right, man. I hope you have a great night.
All right, you too, Colin. Take care.
Yep, too.